Thanks and welcome to Great Movie Scenes, the first series to discuss just that, great scenes from movies. I'm your host, Michelle, and today I am joined by Greg Russell, a film critic from Detroit. Hi, Greg.
Hello, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Great, glad to be here with you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. I mean, I'm sure it was probably a difficult question when I asked you, hey, pick just one scene from a movie, seeing as you've probably seen a lot. So
Thousands, yes.
right. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm guessing this wasn't the easiest of tasks to just pinpoint down to one, but tell us what scene that we're going to be watching today that you chose.
I picked from the movie Lost in America, 1985, Albert Brooks. Albert is one of my all-time favorite filmmakers. I love his movies. I love his wit and his style. And the scene that I picked out of the movie, for those who aren't familiar with it, it's all about a guy and his wife. He thinks he's going to get this great promotion at work. He doesn't get it, so they figure the heck with it. Let's sell everything and just go across country in a big RV for the rest of our lives. So their first stop happens to be Las Vegas. Now, at the time, I think they had like $125,000 in their nest egg, which 1985, hey, that's a great amount of money.
Yeah.
Well, as it turns out, Albert goes to sleep. He wakes up, his wife's not in the room, goes downstairs, only to find out she's been in the casino all night and basically has lost everything. So Albert calls for the manager of the hotel, played greatly by the late Gary Marshall. He wants to talk to him about, figuring out a way to get their money back. And that's what this whole scene is about, where Albert's just kind of like throwing out everything he possibly can to try to get his money back. And Gary is just so deadpan. He's fabulous.
Okay, great. Let's watch the scene and we'll come back and we'll talk about it.
All right.
Oldest experiment in advertising history. You give us our money back. I beg your pardon? Give us our money back. Think of the publicity. The Hilton Hotel has these billboards all over Los Angeles where the winners of these slot machine jackpots, their faces are all over LA. And I know that works. I've seen people at corners look up and say, maybe I'll go to the Hilton. Well, you give us our money back. I don't even know now because I'm just coming off the top of my head, but a visual where if we had a billboard and the Desert Inn handed us our nest egg back, this gives the Desert Inn really, Vegas is not associated with feeling.
First of all, those people on those signs, they won. You lost.
But that's it. That's the campaign.
What's the campaign?
You gave my wife and I our money back because you reviewed our situation and you realized that we dropped out of society and we weren't just gamblers and we made a mistake and you gave our money back. Do you know you couldn't get a room in this place for 10 years?
Then everybody will want their money back. All the gamblers will say, hey, go to the Desert Inn and get our money back.
Not gamblers. You keep all the money. It's just that my wife and I aren't gamblers. That's what I'm saying. That's the distinction. My wife and I represent the few people, and I'll tell you something, there's probably nobody else that's ever going to come and have this happen. So really, probably we're the only two. We represent the people who have taken the chance, and we made a mistake, and then the Desert Inn corrects it and gives it back. There is a warm feeling here.
But you don't think everybody then will want their money back?
No. In the campaign, you make a clear distinction between the bold, would be my wife and I, and then all the other schmucks who come here to see Wayne Newton.
I like Wayne.
I said Wayne Newton.
What were you talking about? I heard you say schmuck, see Wayne Newton. I like him. Makes me a schmuck.
Oh, no. I'm stupid to use an entertainer as a dividing point. I just meant all the people that come here carefree on their way to see a show, and my wife and I, who, if you knew us, believe me, you would believe me.
You're bold.
Yes. So what do you think?
I don't think the sign's going to work and giving
The sign is wrong. A jingle, a television campaign. The Desert Inn has heart. The Desert Inn has heart. The Desert Inn has heart.
It's enough. The casino is our main means of income, not the coffee shop, not the show, the casino. That's what pays all our bills. So if we give everybody their money back, we can't pay our bills. Sorry, we can't change our bills.
Okay, play a fun word game with me. This will do it. What do you think of when you think of a hunting lot?
Hunt.
Yes. What do you think of when you think of a rest home?
The rest.
So you see, we're going to associate the Desert Inn with something beautiful. You don't think of anything here now, do you?
Gambling. That's why people come here.
That's
to
right.
gamble. They want to go to hunting lodge, they go to Wisconsin. They want to rest, they go to New Orleans. They want to gamble, they come to Vegas. That's what it's called, gambling, Las Vegas gambling. You see signs around this town with guys with guns shooting ducks. It's a gambling place. They don't shoot ducks, raccoons, beavers. They come to gamble. That's what we do here. Now, you're a nice guy. You make me laugh and everything. But our policy is we can't give you. I'm real sorry. Say goodbye to your wife. I got to go home.
What about Miracle on 34th Street?
It's the Christmas movie.
Yes, it was. Now, there was Gimbals, who was afraid that if they gave something up that they would lose. And they wound up benefiting. He was afraid that if he gave to Macy's, he would lose his business, and he didn't. It's the same situation. This costs you nothing. To give us our money back is nothing. You would be the one who would benefit.
Wrong. In that movie, Santa Claus took care of everything. There was Macy's, Gimbals, but Santa Claus came and he fixed the whole thing. We don't have Santa Claus.
Then we get him.
Oh,
Santa Claus, we get him. That's the ad campaign. There it goes. I have the chills. We get Santa Claus. He's the one on the billboard. He hands us our nest egg. We associate for the first time ever Christmas and Las Vegas. Las Vegas, a Christmas place to be.
we're finished talking.
Okay, so now that we watched the scene, tell me a little bit why you chose it. Because I'm going to be honest, I was a little surprised because I'm thinking, okay, this guy's probably seen thousands of movies. I'm thinking it might have been something different, but I'll tell you why I liked it after you explain why you chose it.
Okay. Well, like I said, it came out in '85. I remember seeing the movie and enjoyed it. Also, I've worked my life in television and radio, doing different shows. And I've always been on air, but sometimes you'd have to go out like with salespeople from the station when they make the sales calls. And you would hear them sometimes where the person is like, no, I'm good. I don't need this. And they would just come up with these weird campaigns. All of a sudden, like, the desert inn has heart. The desert inn has heart. I've got the chills. I mean, they're bringing this stuff up, making it sound like it's the greatest thing, since Mozart. And that's how Albert's character is just so determined to, figure out some way to get his money back. Also, like I said, Gary Marshall is fabulous. I had the opportunity to talk to him a few years back. And even though it was for another movie, I brought this scene up to him. He said he loved it because the majority of it was ad-libbed. I mean, they knew what was going on in the scene. But, a lot of the stuff, because Albert's just, think of Christmas, think of this. I mean, just like a salesperson would. And he just knew he had to sit there and be deadpan and just kind of like, nope, sorry. But yeah, it's just, probably there are a lot of folks out there. There are just certain scenes that they also have fun with their friends. Good friend of mine also works in advertising. And when he got hired as a senior vice president, I sent him a goofy message because the guy who beat out Albert's character's name is Phil Shimano. And I said, congratulations to you, Phil Shimano, you blankety blank. And he just laughed because he got the whole joke. But yeah, that's the reason why, or some of the reasons why I really like that scene.
Well, yeah, I mean, I would have, I don't know, I would have thought maybe something more action or something, more going on in the scene. But the reason why I love that you chose it, because I've brought this up a couple other times, and this is just opinion that I have. Some of the most powerful scenes are just two people talking.
Right.
You don't always have to have all of these commotions and all of this stuff going on. It doesn't have to, be a bunch of costumes or anything like that. I mean, of course, those help for sure. But I mean, I remember seeing the film Hunger, and Michael Fassbender and the priest are just at a table talking to each other. And you just couldn't take your eyes off of it. And there was very little camera movement, but it was just, you were in that scene. So watching this, and I haven't seen this movie, but watching this, I'm fully invested in the scene. But I did also wonder, gosh, there's two filmmakers across a table from each other. Like, what are they thinking in their head? Because I mean, I'm sure acting, they're in the moment, but also they have to be thinking like filmmakers. They have to be wondering, oh, if I put my hand here, if I'm, so that, I don't know, that's another interesting thing about the two actors in the scene.
Yeah, because they've always admired each other. Because Gary Marshall also produced the Odd Couple TV show back in the 70s. And Albert Brooks would be sometimes in different episodes because they always just really liked each other. And they've got, that quirky comedy. It's not the slapstick stuff, the falling down stuff or getting punched. It's just, they take whatever the situation is and just make it funny, because Albert, he's just always kind of like so neurotic.
Yeah.
in his films. And I hate to say it, I can go along with that. I'll watch it and go, oh my goodness, that's me, from time to time.
Mm.
But yeah, I just, I've always liked his movies. And again, as well with Gary Marshall, I mean, just fantastic filmmaker.
Right. So when looking at the scene in general, I mean, apart from, like we said, like just two actors talking to each other, when you're looking at it through a critical lens, what about it really worked? Like, was it the ad-libbing of the dialogue? Was it just the fact that it was a minimal set? I mean, when you're looking at it holistically, what do you think are the things that you pick out the most each time you watch it? Because I'm guessing you'd see a movie once and then you'd watch it again and then you pick up things along the way. So now that you've seen it a couple of times, what's your holistic approach to what makes it work?
Well, kind of like you hit it right there. I mean, here's a scene where, again, like we said, there doesn't have to be a lamp falling down or a chicken running through. You've got just these two men sitting in a room and they're talking to each other. And one, like I said, is just so filled with desperation that he is ready to offer anything in the world, to get his money and basically his life back. Another one understands what his business is, and it's like, that's not the way it works. I can't even twist it to say, okay, we'll give you back $50,000. And so it's just kind of like the confrontation between the two until finally just at the end when Gary Marshall says, we're done here.
Mm.
That's
Yeah.
it. You're
Yeah.
over. It's like a breakup. If somebody looks at you and tells you we're done, it's like, never mind, you're done, move on.
Well, I'm curious, because on this series we've talked to directors, writers, actors, producers, and a couple of film critics as well. So I'm just interested because my background is acting and writing, and so I think anytime you're on a set, you always think you're the most important person, or like you're, oh, everything is on my shoulders and things like that. But when you're a film critic and you're stepping out of that, you're watching everything that's going on. What are some things that you feel like, do you feel like a film could still be great without a consistent storyline? Do you think a film could be great if there's an ensemble cast and a couple of the actors aren't great? Do you think that a film could work where the story is great, the actors are great, but maybe the director wasn't the best? I mean, what are some things that you pick up on when you watch films?
Wow. I think, like you said, just really like the storyline, just to see how it goes and where it's going. Because even when you do see something, I'll just pick out Love Actually, one of our favorite Christmas movies. Like you said, it's an ensemble cast. There are like 4 or 5 stories all going on. And you watch them all, just to see what's happening with this one. Who's going to, be in love in this one? What's happening here? But then even just at the end, how all those stories tie together, it's kind of like, everyone knew each other, through some way, shape, or form. So, you like that. And then also, when it does come down to acting, yeah, it is. It's like, how much is a person really putting into their character? That's why, people always talk about Tom Hanks. He is, this gem as far as an actor. I mean, be it comedy or be it something serious, when you watch him, you believe that he is whoever that person is he's portraying on the screen. And that is always just so good. He never, I mean, he could easily mail it in if he wants now, but he doesn't. He never does. I mean, like his new movie, Fetch, I don't know if you got a chance to see that, but it's all about this man who's on this journey that he wants to finish. And you feel it and you see it in his character and even just the way his body is moving, throughout the film. So yeah, those are certain things that you do look for.
Do you feel like there's ever maybe, I don't know, depending on like the time in your life when you watched the movie or something, where a movie really didn't land well with you the first time that you saw it, but maybe the second or third time? I'm thinking of, and I've mentioned this so many times on this series, I probably need to find something else to talk about. But my complete love and adoration for Al Pacino.
Okay.
And you think of the movie Scarface, and when it came out, it was not well received, but now it's like this cult classic. Has that ever like occurred to you where you've seen a movie like when it was released and you're like, and then you for whatever reason watch it again and you're like, oh, now that I'm in a different headspace, this is a completely different film?
Oh yeah. I mean, one that I can pick out in particular, because it's not that old, But I remember like when Wedding Crashers first came out, at first I'm thinking, oh my goodness, this is just so, now it's on TV basically every other day.
Yeah.
And you just start watching it. And I think it's because of the familiarity. You already know what's coming up, but it's like, oh, that is so funny again, when he's dancing with the little girl at the wedding just to get the attention of, the lady over there, and the football game. Because remember Bradley Cooper, that was before anybody really knew who he was.
Right.
And he was just the best. Ugh, I can't say the word, but it's kind of like you're going, I hope something happens to him. I mean, nothing bad, but I hope something does. And when it did, you're like going, great. But yeah, there are a lot of movies that I have where I can just watch over and over. I mean, another one of my favorites, and I thought about this one as well, and maybe we can do this at another time, is the movie Sideways. I love that movie.
Mm-hmm.
Every time it comes on, I watch it, I recite the lines. Because there's the one scene, remember when they were going off to, wine country, and so they stop at Paul Giamatti's mom's house. Yeah. And so it's him and Thomas Hayden Church and his mom fixes them a meal, and she brings it out, puts the place in front of Thomas Hayden Church, and he looks down and he goes, oh, this is really nice. Is this chicken? Like he doesn't really know what it is. Every time that comes on, I call up my son-in-law, because I would have taped it off the TV and go, look what's on. And he loves that chicken line. So yeah, things like that.
Nice. Well, it's interesting to kind of bring back something that you just said, bringing it back to the scene about, Wedding Crashers and the familiarity. And I think with Al Pacino and with Albert Brooks, and sometimes you think of some of those guys and you think, oh, okay, this is going to be maybe something predictable. Yeah, I'm going to see this, Al Pacino, like this rough guy with the gravelly voice, or with Albert Brooks, I'm going to see this like kooky character. What do you think it is? Because I've thought about this a lot, and some of those guys that came out of the 70s, they did have their shtick, if you for lack of a better word. They had their whole thing going on, but in each movie, it's slightly different. In each movie, I mean, you're watching an Albert Brooks movie, you're watching an Al Pacino movie, but there's something about it that's different that I've never been able to really pinpoint. So, I mean, the scene that we just watched, okay, yeah, Albert Brooks, he's doing this kind of kooky, but it's different from the other times that we've seen him. Like, what do you think that is? Or if you go into a movie and you're like, okay, I know this actor, do you have this like preconceived notion of like, this is what I'm going to see? Or are you able to kind of go in with a completely blank slate?
I try to go in with a completely blank slate, because like you said, depending on what the movie is. I mean, even thinking way back, Albert Brooks was in Taxi Driver with Robert De Niro. And his character was this guy who worked in the office with Sybil Shepherd. He kind of had the crush on Sybil Shepherd. So he was always kind of leering at De Niro's character. So, I mean, he may have had a little bit of funny going on, but I mean, it wasn't a comedy, as you know, and he wasn't doing it in a comedic way. And then trying to think, what was the other? Oh, also, we have to give Albert Brooks credit. Any person who's ever been on television owes him big time for this. In the movie Broadcast News, if it wasn't for him, none of us would know how to grab the tail of your coat or your sweater and sit on it to smooth out your shoulders. I mean, that, out of all the things in that movie, that's the one thing that really sticks out to me, because it's like, as you know, if you've been on TV, you'll have, like the hunches or something like that. We all saw that movie and it's like, thank you. And in that movie as well, he was somewhat comedic, but he was more of a, kind of like jealous guy, as far as things go. So yeah, able to change it up a little.
And I think of like, one of my favorite TV shows is the show Weeds. And he was on a couple of episodes where he plays, Andy's father. And he's kind of just like grumpy. I mean, he's still funny, but he has this like harshness, and you don't really like him that much. But it's interesting to me of, and I don't know, I think I was born too late. I think I was meant to be alive during the 70s to see all of these great guys in real time. There's just something special about that era, I feel like, of the, the actors that came out of that generation. And the same thing with, well, Gary Marshall was before the 70s, but with that whole kind of family dynasty too, it's one of the few that in Hollywood that was really lasting without any kind of scandals or anything like that. And they were kind of just people that you felt like I know them. Like I grew up with them down the street. So yeah, I mean, I don't know, like that scene, I haven't seen this movie. It's on my list now for sure. Um,
Great.
yeah, I know for sure. I mean, there's so many films that people have brought up. I've seen a couple, but there's a couple that I'm like, I need to write this down because I did not know this movie. Yeah, and this one was one of them. So thank you so much for choosing it.
You're welcome. Anytime. No, I like I said, it's just one of those where I think we all have those comfort films
Yeah.
where, especially over this past year, we were pulling out movies we hadn't seen in a long time. But
Mm,
then I would pull out, say, Lost in America, or like we said, Sideways, or even Caddyshack.
mm,
Because like my buddies and I during the summer, we're like the worst golfers in the world, but we don't care. The main thing is just getting together with your friends.
yeah.
And, we lie about the score, just like in the movie. How many strokes was that for you to get here? 5. And then somebody's behind you going, like that. But, those are just the movies that and it's just, like you said, it's just this comfort thing. It's almost like the grilled cheese sandwich and the tomato soup. It just
Right.
makes you feel good.
Yeah. Well, this one last question, because I've asked a couple people this, and I'm interested always to hear what people's reactions are.
Okay.
Is there such a thing as a bad movie?
Actually, I'm really glad you asked that, because there have been times people always say that I am pretty nice when, grading a film or something like that. And I'll tell people it all depends on the person, really. Because to be honest, my wife, if she walks in the room and she sees me watching an Albert Brooks movie, she's like, oh my goodness, grabs it, runs out of the room. But then I'm kind of the same way, where she's watching Fried Green Tomatoes and I'm just going, oh my goodness, I gotta get out of here. Because everybody will enjoy, has their own, feel for certain movies. I mean, are there some bad movies? Yeah. But like I've told people recently, especially say like back in the 50s or 60s, a person could make a movie for $2,500 or $5,000. So of course you're going to get the worst actors, in it, the worst special effects and all like that. There are no such thing as cheap movies anymore.
Right.
So it's kind of like whoever is investing, it's like, no, I may not get Star Wars,
Mhm.
but I don't want, the 50-foot woman from Mars, like in the 1950s. I want something that's going to be good.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I said, they're just somewhere you're going to like and some you're just not going to like.
Right. Yeah, I'm always interested because I have a lot of friends who are like into the indie horror film like
Mhm.
world, and I've went to a couple of these conventions and I'm watching some of these movies and I'm like, okay, it's not for me, but
Mhm.
there's tons of people there. Like there is an audience. So it's similar to, I guess, like with Albert Brooks. Like he could sometimes be like a little bit polarizing, or even Mel Brooks, where some people,
Oh,
I mean, I happen to think that, History of the World is one of the funniest movies. But I mean, there's some people who are like, not so much. So yeah, I was interested to ask you that because obviously you've seen a lot more films than I have, and it's an interesting question to ask because there
yeah,
are people who are like B-rated movies. No, they're meant to be bad for a reason, and I'm like,
yeah.
yeah, but there's still people that they get them, and
Mhm.
that's their thing, and just because you don't get it doesn't necessarily make it bad.
Right,
So
right.
yeah.
A- And I'm so glad you mentioned History of the World Part 1. I
Yeah.
liked you before. I even like even more.
Yeah,
So
I just saw they're coming out. They're actually going to make the part two finally.
really?
Yeah, I just saw that. I don't know if it was a rumor, but I just saw it. I'm like, please let this be true. Please, I'm enough. Like enough of these sequels and remakes. Please just make History of the World Part 2, and we can all be
Yeah.
happy, and then COVID will be over, and the world will be great again. Like that's all we need.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
And just say, I'll even ask you, like even during COVID, what movie that you hadn't seen for a long time did you basically pull off the shelf and go, I'm going to watch this, and all of a sudden it's like, wow, I forgot how good it was.
Yeah, so I actually there were two films that my freshman and sophomore year of high school I would watch on repeat. And then for some reason those 2 years, like I was constantly watching these movies, but I
Mhm.
haven't watched them since. And it was Almost Famous and then the film Sleepers, which
Okay.
oddly, like a lot of people don't know about Sleepers. I think it's
Yeah.
amazing. It's a little weird that I was obsessed with that movie at 14 because it's heavy and
Right.
but no, I watched those again and it made me, I just was kind of looking to go back in time and be like, this is all too stressful. Let me pretend I'm a teenager again. And so, yeah, those were the movies that I watched. And also, because it was just Halloween not too long ago, I watched a couple of times Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, because if you want to talk about Halloween movies and you don't mention that movie, then you don't know anything about Halloween movies.
You're my new best friend.
Yeah.
I'm moving next door. No, I'm with you. I love that movie. It's always been said that after the original first Frankenstein movie, that was the best Frankenstein movie ever.
Yeah.
And I have to say this, I did interviews today. There's a new movie coming out called Wolf, and it deals with this guy who has this condition where he believes he's a wolf.
Okay.
And so when talking, I told him, I said, one of the best lines ever was out of that movie where Lon Chaney Jr. was talking to Abbott and Costello about, I've got to get out of here. You guys have to save me, because as soon as the sun goes down and the moon comes out, I'll turn into a wolf. And Costello looked at him and said, yeah, so does every other guy here in town. And he was going, oh my God.
When he barks into the phone because he thinks it's the dog. Yeah, no, it's just, and I didn't know this up until recently. A lot of people think that Bela Lugosi reprised his role often of Dracula, but really that was only the second time that he did that, and he didn't do it after that. And I just kind of thought like, oh, like he did it a couple other times because he did some other kind of like horror films, or like he played some kind of vampire in another film, but that really was the only other time. I was fortunate that my grandfather really instilled, he always said you have to have, you got to have culture and you got to have class. And so he would make my cousin and he would make us watch Wallace Berry films.
Great.
And then quiz us afterward. My cousin was very rebellious, and I was the nerd who actually wanted to watch them. So yeah, no, I mean that film, I feel like I think who was it? Martin Short did something on AMC where he was talking about like that was the film that like he loved and inspired him to be a comedian. And I feel like I hope that Abbott and Costello never get lost in history, because they're so much more than just the Who's on First guy. Like they've done so much. So yeah, we could have a whole other episode where we just talk about that whole movie.
Oh, well, we'll do it for Halloween. Well, Halloween's going to be coming up again quicker than we know.
It'll happen. Yeah. Yeah.
But no, I just think that's absolutely great, because I've talked with, like, especially like I said, a lot of young people who are, want to be filmmakers, which is great. Mm-hmm. And I'll bring up a particular movie or a particular person, and they'll be going, who?
Yeah.
And like I tell them, I said, I know you've never heard of Rudolph Valentino. Now, trust me, he died when my mother was a child. Mm-hmm. So, never around with me, but I know who he was. I know about the movies and different things that he was in. And that's what you need to learn. You need to learn your history in regards
100%. I'll tell you this little story because it's comical. A couple months ago, I was at the gym, and there was a guy on some machine, but it had one of the TV screens, and he was watching one of the Spider-Man films. Okay. And he remarked to his friend, he was just like, oh yeah, this is the scene with like Aunt May and Tony Stark. And I stopped, and I was just like, first of all, you need to pay some respect to the early 90s rom-coms, because Marissa Tomei and Robert Downey Jr. were in Only You and Chaplin together first, okay? Mm-hmm. Just like, some of these people who were like, oh yeah, Robert Downey Jr. is just, I'm like, oh no. Mm-hmm. He had a whole 80s and early 90s career of being this charismatic, like one of my first crushes. Like, like don't forget this. Tony Stark's great, but he had a whole other career before that.
Right.
So yeah. So yeah, I'm very vocal. Anyway. Well, thank you so much for sitting down and talking with us today. And I look forward to talking to you more in the future. And thank you so much for tuning in to Great Movie Scenes, the first series to discuss just that, great scenes movies. We'll see you next time.
Take care.